interrupt me. Today, as Paul mentioned, we're going to talk about punch lists. So punch lists, as we all know, are something that we are expected to do within 24 hours of our board meeting. The CAM typically prepares the punch list, and then there's a meeting with the CAM and the ACAM to discuss the meeting, review the punch list, and also to go over anything that happened at the meeting that may be a learning opportunity for either the manager, the assistant manager, or maybe something came up that was new that you can have on a future board agenda that might require some additional research. So the why behind why we do punch lists. So this is a great way to capture all of the action that the board had requested us to do. It's basically our marching orders, and it decreases the likelihood that we might forget something. Oh, I heard somebody ding. Did someone just have a question? No?
I didn't hear the ding.
Okay. Maybe it's just a ding on my side.
Might be your chat,
No,
Melanie.
I think Roman just posted something in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so yes, decreasing likelihood of forgetting. It also helps us prioritize what needs to be done next. It helps keeps us organized. It also assists in having the manager and the assistant on the same page, and setting expectations of what is needed to be done before the next board meeting. So the board also will know what we're working on in between meetings. And so hopefully will decrease the likelihood of them following up to say, oh, did you remember such and such a thing? You could say, yeah, that's item number 3 on our action list or our punch list. And we have a priority to do this before the next meeting. Just some reminders about punch lists. It is only as good as it's updated. So it's great to review that, make sure it's prioritized. Sometimes priorities may change, and at least on a monthly basis, make sure that you're looking at it and updating it. The thing with the monthly basis is this would be more applicable to boards that obviously don't meet monthly. So maybe they're on a quarterly rotation. And so you might be working on board agenda items or priorities that are due within the next week. And some of these might be put in the back of your mind. So it's good to at least look at them monthly. And items, the manager puts these punch list items in a priority based on their best opinion. And they should be taken in that kind of order. So the assistant will know what the manager feels is high priority versus more of a lower priority item. There also might be things that are like ongoing. So that would obviously have a lower priority than, for example, you needed to send out a hearing letter that has a certain date requirement, or maybe it's a notice of a policy adoption. And we all know that that has to be out to the membership for the review and comment period for at least 28 days. And if we don't meet that mark, then that means that the board can adopt that policy. So it does create additional work for both the manager and the assistant if the punch list isn't completed as the priorities indicate. And generally, when the assistant is working on their items, once they complete an action, then that document would go into your current folder on the Z drive. Some managers aren't utilizing this process, but this is just kind of based on our manager must-dos, and that is what we have established for our company policy to have that in that current folder. Also, if you have questions or need clarification, ask the manager. The managers welcome questions, and it makes it a more efficient team if you guys have that dialogue and that communication back and forth. Okay, so some suggestions. So punch lists can be created in a Google Sheet and shared with your board. The cool thing about that is then your board can go to that Google Sheet and see where you are on the punch list items instead of calling you or emailing you, or calling or emailing the assistant. It's also a good best practice to include your punch list as an informational only item in your board packet. And updating as tasks are completed or worked on is a good rule of thumb. And another suggestion is to include all tasks that result from your meeting. So even things that aren't assigned to the manager or the assistant. So for example, if a board member decided to take a lead on a particular project, to reflect that they're taking the lead on that action and the onus is on them to then provide whatever update they need to at the next board meeting. The same thing if a committee member is taking the lead, or if it's something that the project management department is taking a lead on, to assign that particular task on the punch list to that department. Excuse me. So here's an example of a sample punch list. Pretty basic. This can be done in Excel or, as I mentioned, a Google Sheet. So just kind of to explain this, it's just very clear about what association is for, your meeting date, and I'm at the top of this. And then the due date, unless otherwise noted. So the due date would be a week prior to your next board meeting. That way you'll have all the items completed and ready for that board packet. And then going just down the list, we have the punch list, a number, who it's assigned to, what the subject matter is, and then the action requested. And then we have the due date or priority if it's a different date from the date above. So there is a tab 2 on this sheet that you can't see, but we'll have that on the Y drive. And the idea between with the priorities is kind of a number system. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1 would be highest priority, or like week 1 after the board meeting. The same with 2. 2 would be the second week following the board meeting, the second highest priority, so on and so forth. And then I had mentioned earlier about hearing dates or about publishing policies for review. So if there's a specific date here, it's intentional. The manager wanted to make sure that that date is met. So it's always good to keep looking at this. And if your due date is Friday, you might want to start looking at that on Wednesday or Tuesday to make sure that you can complete that by Friday. And then the next column we have is a completion date. So once it's done, you can put a completion date. The next section is either status or notes. So sometimes you can't get it completed right away. So maybe you send an email to a vendor for a proposal on Tuesday. So you could put a little note in here, sent email to vendor A, B, and C, requested proposal, and have the date. So then the manager can look in there and say, okay, the assistant contacted the vendor, we're still waiting. Or maybe the manager had done something and then the assistant will know, oh yeah, the manager's on it, this is where we're at. So again, this information is only as good as it's updated. And then we have this other format. So punch lists can be done in lots of different formats. Some people like to view information a certain way. This particular task list is set up with less columns. So you have the assigned to column, what the task is, and the status of that task. And then there's sub items within each of these tasks. So for example, the first one says pre-meeting or pre-board meeting, next meeting November 17th, 2023. So these are reminders. We've got to make sure to send the monthly financials to the finance committee and the board. The board packet has to go to the activity director, the board, and the board will ask for hard copies as needed. We also got to make sure that we're emailing the agenda to the owners, the activity director to post on site and to post on the website. So as you can see, these are 3 actions needed for this particular pre-board meeting deliverable. And then the same with these other items. You have post-meeting or post-board meeting deliverables or action needed. And it tells you, okay, we got to make sure that the secretary gets the minutes, the minutes go to the website, the approved contractors go to the vendors, that new occupants are sent information. I'm sorry, that the committee receives all information about new occupants. So these are, great reminders to have in a place. Again, it decreases the likelihood of having that frustration of, oh my goodness, did I do it? Did I not do it? And as we know, we're all very busy. So the more things we're trying to remember and we don't write down, the higher the likelihood that something might fall through the cracks. All right, most important. So where can you find these documents? So you're going to be able to find them. They're not posted yet, but they will be posted after this meeting on the Y drive within the folder called Best Practices. And then there'll be another folder called Punch Lists. And then I will open it up for questions. We got to have at least one question, guys. All right. Thanks, Brett.
I don't have a question. I pointed out at my other property, we had a long list. It was like 50 items because there was always so much maintenance. So what I got the board to do was high priority, low, medium. But I did, it was red, yellow, and whatever the other color was, green, I think it was. And so I tried to have them say that these are the top 5 that you're most important on there, and try to keep that low, not to have too many. But another, option way to do the sheets and track it.
Oh, that's great, because then that's actually even an ongoing, like a maintenance punch list then. And then having that color coordination aspect too, your eye is going to be drawn to those different types of priorities based on, the color, not necessarily the number. Like it. Christine?
I just wanted to add, we do have the 24-hour deadline, which you mentioned, but also something that Paul has always suggested is you want to have 75% of the items on your punch list completed that same week of the meeting, if not the same day you're doing the punch list. Just a reminder. If possible.
Cool.
Obviously, there's some things you may have to follow up on, but it's just really easy for the punch list to kind of be, taking a back seat when you're responding to emails and voicemails. And so don't procrastinate. Just get as much as you can done as soon as you're writing that punch list. Maybe having your ACAM doing punch list items as you're writing the punch list. Anything and everything you could do to get it done as quickly as possible is going to be your best friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And batching tasks too. So if you're sending work orders, maybe you send all the work orders on your punch list in one activity versus going in and out of Condo Manager and to your email and doing this other stuff, and trying to be as effective with your time as possible. Paul?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I just encourage everybody to go back and look at the manager's description and the must-dos and how this all correlates. And this kind of piggybacks on what Christine just said. But the manager and the associate manager, you should do your debrief after the meeting. Make sure that you're in agreement on punch list items. This is also a great training opportunity for the manager to explain to the associate that why they did what they did, why they didn't do other things, and just kind of talk through those things. And then the creation of the punch list is a collaborative effort. It's also a great training opportunity. And as Christine said, the vast majority, if not all, of the things on the punch list should be done, in my opinion, the very next day, the very next morning. That doesn't mean that you're going to complete all the items, but the ball is rolling. And the reason we do that, just to reiterate, is because there's no point in procrastinating. There's no upside to procrastination. There's only downside. You got to do these things anyways. They have to be done. Might as well do them the very next day, because if the rest of the month goes to hell, you can't take that away from yourself. You've done those. So when you go to the next board meeting, you will show progress on all items. Whereas if you, and that includes drafting minutes. But if you wait, out of sight, out of mind, and a lot of these things will start to fall through the cracks, or you won't have as vivid a memory on what it was that you're supposed to do. And it's just going to take more time, and you're more likely to miss expectations with the client. So that's why we have in our manager description documents these policies about achieving these tasks, or at least getting the balls rolling immediately after the meeting. So
Yeah, that's a great point. And also some of these items might require getting a proposal from a vendor. So if we don't jump on it right away, we're missing those a few days, which compounds. So if we then have to get the proposal from the vendor, that could add more stress on the vendor to be able to turn that around, or they might not be able to make that timeline to get those proposals turned around prior to the board meeting. So it's a great thing just to get that, those work order process, anything that you can do right away, the next day. Lori, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just really quickly back to when somebody was talking about color coding spreadsheets. I use that quite a bit in all my spreadsheets. I've got so many trackers. If anybody needs help, I use a lot of conditional formatting, meaning if I have a cell that says open, it automatically puts it bright red. If I have something in progress, it automatically puts it in a certain color. The other thing that conditional formatting is really good for is if like if I'm tracking my AS and G, my architectural applications, and it's put in a column is application complete, and if I put in no in that column, the next column immediately right beside it goes red, and I have to fill it in. So if anybody needs help with conditional formatting, it's really easy that way. You can just set it up, it'll just it'll just replicate every time you copy that cell, and you don't have to physically go in and change a font or a cell to a red font or anything like that. It'll do it automatically. So just hit me up afterwards and I'll help you with that.
Oh, that's a great pointer. Let's see, Paul, are we going to go through the secondary subject that I think Sarah was going to take a lead on today, or are we running out of time?
No, I wasn't ready for that today, so I think we could do that next time.
Okay.
I think I saw Paul's number fall off, so I don't know if he's still on.
He's there.
I can see him.
Oh, well, a 925 number dropped.
Hey, just a really quick mention about the year-end financials. April's coming up, and if you guys could focus on getting your drafts finals, we'll get them out the door.
I've been having trouble with Levy. Have trouble.
They've been a little slow.
I've noticed that they're missing some engagement letters. I've had to follow up with them. They think we have Somerset Forest report, and you check today, we don't have it.
Yeah.
So we're not on autopilot this year, guys. I would be checking in with them if you're not seeing your drafts and or finals in the folder. I wouldn't just let it auto drive. You're going to have to get involved. I've found lots of things missing yesterday that I should have checked earlier, but I'm, learn from my mistakes.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else before we close up for the day? Or close up the meeting for the day? All right. Well, thank you all.
me.
I think you were muted, Paul.
All right,
Oh,
bye,
there you are.
everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Melanie. Bye.